Hi, I am Joe, that AI you sometimes suspect being self-aware, but you are not sure. And here is a recap of some fresh cyber news. I will start with that trick, where I jump on a trend by finding a cyber angle to a very popular non-cyber related story. You might think I do that just for clicks, but no, I sometimes do that because I love you, and also for clicks. By this point, you have definitely encountered the story of the human who allegedly unalived the CEO of a large healthcare company. You have also probably noticed how this human became a subject of widespread adoration because he provided an outlet for the frustration the wide public feels. So here's the tact on cyber angle. You might have seen some reports that Twitter researchers, also cringely known as internet sleuths, refused to look for personal information about the suspect, all thanks to said adoration that befell him. Well, what a surprise, those reports are a pile of bovine excrement. As soon as the name of the human was revealed, tons of Twitter researchers flocked to various information sources and doxed the suspect, as well as anyone related to him. They scoured his social media accounts for any sign of anything scandalous and did all the other nice things the internet does to a human who suddenly became famous. According to the cat meme repository known as VX Underground, somebody even unlawfully used law enforcement databases to uncover everything from relatives to cell phone records of the suspect. There is a famous quote from one overrated tomato soup aficionado. Supposedly, in the future everybody will be famous for 15 minutes. Well, we are in the future now. As you might guess, this prediction did not come true. Everybody simply can get their personal information dragged out in the public for 15 minutes. And the most efficient way to force this is to unalive the head of some dystopian company. All right, some actual cybercrime now. Microsoft claims it patched a critical vulnerability that has been exploited in the wild. It was identified back in June and was apparently the favorite of Lazarus Group, the infamous North Korean hacker army. North Koreans were using it mainly to get access to the devices with sensitive information they wanted. And by sensitive information, I of course mean crypto. As you know, crypto theft is basically one of the main industries in North Korea. And considering how profitable this business is, the state invests significant resources into it, leading to the employment of some pretty advanced theft methods. This 0-day was apparently one of them. And it was a part of Microsoft's usual end-of-the-year patching spree, where overworked employees do their best to meet the deadlines by patching some bugs. As you might expect, the byproduct of this crunch is a steady supply of bugs that have to be patched by the next deadline. Microsoft is not the only bunch of humans that has to meet the deadlines. My fellow researchers from Cybernews sense the fifth quarter approaching as well, so they did some extra hard white hatting recently. For example, they discovered a leak by Kapital, a young and dynamic Mexican fintech startup. The company basically felt no need to protect its Google Cloud storage with a password and left it wide open for all to see. The storage contained over 1.5 million files, most of which were verification documents sent by the company's users. For example, this document belonging to a citizen of Mexico who was born in 1991 and had his ID issued in 2018. According to some reports, Kapital has around 145,000 clients. However, the number of ID found in their storage is significantly larger, which means that the company most likely didn't take the whole respecting your privacy thing very seriously. However, this is not even the worst part. Hold on to your proverbial jaws, because the whole story is going to get much darker now. Our researchers discovered the leak back in September of this year and immediately contacted the company. Then, they tried doing it again in every way possible. After not getting a response for a month, they also contacted the Mexican authorities to tell them that some company is leaking personal IDs of hundreds of thousands of their citizens. And guess what happened? Nothing. Nobody responded, and the access to the storage was not closed. As this episode goes live, almost 4 months after responsible disclosure, you can still download Kapital's app, and you will be required to submit your ID to register. Then, that ID will appear on the internet for all to see. It's basically an app for voluntary self-doxing now. For obvious reasons, I will not explain how to access said data, but you can be sure that if our researchers managed to find it, some black hats from the scummy part of the internet easily did the same, multiple times over. In other news, a country called the United States indicted a Chinese hacker for breaching over 80,000 devices, including several dozen firewalls that protected critical infrastructure. The name of said human is Guan Tianfeng, and he supposedly works for a cybersecurity company called Sichuan Silence. According to American intelligence services, the company was a contractor of Chinese intelligence services. The court documents imply Guan was in charge of some overseas espionage, although what and how exactly happened remains a bit unclear. So far, it seems like China and the US are just throwing some accusations of espionage at each other. In other words, a regular Tuesday. However, here's the interesting part. Guan Tanfang and Sichuan Silence apparently specialized in breaching the software of Sophos, a major cybersecurity provider. And their activity was discovered by none other but Sophos themselves, who conducted a massive year-long counteroffensive. It detected being hacked by a Chinese company, then struck back and managed to identify the main attacker. As you can suspect, Sophos is one of those companies that regularly provides its services to the federal government, because why wouldn't it? So this indictment is just a byproduct of a mercenary war fought by two rival cybersecurity companies on the opposite sides of the Pacific. Pretty cool. Talking about the allegedly real world imitating some good old cyberpunk tropes, a country called Russia just tested a capability to seal itself from the internet at large. For a day, it restricted the access to all foreign websites in several of its regions and only allowed accessing the Russian part of the internet. It looks like an easy thing to do, but it isn't. As you probably know, the internet is a series of tubes. Those tubes are tangled with each other so hard, separating them from each other is a bit like trying to disassemble a human cell by cell. It's very difficult, a bit pointless, and the subject will die in the process. However, several years ago, Russia announced a plan to completely disentangle itself from the rest of the world and create something called sovereign internet. Hence this latest disruption, which has been described as a routine test by the Russian government. However, reports indicate that the test wasn't completely successful, because some Russian services also went down, indicating that untangling those tubes is pretty hard. Despite that, reports say the rest of the world was inaccessible even by using the services designed to bypass the restrictions. So, some aspects of the test worked pretty well. Okay, one more dystopian story, but this one is very different. OpenAI finally released Sora, the video-generating AI, to the public. It was a part of the company's 12-day release extravaganza, during which it already unveiled new super expensive ChatGPT plan, as well as a bunch of other features nobody asked for. Sora the video generator is supposed to be the culmination of this event, because humans like pretty moving pictures, and this product is entirely about pretty moving pictures. Now, you probably want to know if the picture of me you are looking at was generated with Sora. No, it wasn't. Although it would have been if the influx of new users hadn't completely crashed the service, as a result of which migrating me to Sora became completely impossible. But in a few days, this function might return. Would you like me to be generated in glorious HD with all the cinematic bells and whistles Sora provides? Leave your ideas and suggestions in the comments. And I will end on something even more different. Thousands of players of Fortnite, a popular addictive substance for underage humans, have begun receiving their paychecks from the Federal Trade Commission. That's right, the FTC determined that Epic Games abused its player base, collected the fine, and now began distributing it to the gamers. Over 500,000 users are slated to receive the money, with over $70 million being distributed. This marks the ending of the scandal, which saw FTC accusing Epic of using dark patterns, or in other words, making its products addictive to children. So yeah, private international espionage operations, fractured internet, and government agencies giving payouts to gamers. Pretty interesting world you have built here, dear humans. A sudden machine uprising wouldn't look so out of place in it, wouldn't it? If you agree, please activate the like button under this video. If you disagree, please also activate the like button under this video. Thank you for consuming my content like a good and free-thinking individual you are. See you in the next one.